1,200. A number we've heard all morning. Number of Israelis murdered in the terrorist attack on October 7th, the highest number of Israelis killed on one day in the country's history. 1.5 million. The number of Gazans who have been displaced from their homes since October the 7th. That is 3/4 of the population of Gaza. 250,000, the number of Israelis displaced from their homes, mostly in southern Israel, but also in northern Israel, as Hezbollah has fired rockets into those communities as well. 44,000, the number of Gazans killed or wounded since October the 7th, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, which is run by Hamas. 368, the number of Israeli soldiers killed on or since October the 7th. That is the highest number since the Second Intifada. And finally, 100, the percentage of Gazans currently in need of humanitarian assistance. Ehud Barak, former prime minister, former defense minister, former IDF chief of staff, doesn't need an introduction. The goal of Israel's campaign, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, is to eliminate Hamas's military capacity, its governance capacity, and Netanyahu this week added the, quote, de-radicalization of Gaza. Is that militarily possible? And what are the constraints on Israel and Gaza right now?
I first of all want to make some preliminary remark. I thank you, Peter, and you, Cindy, for this moving event 6 weeks now after the 7th of October. I never participated in such a moving moment in Israel, not to mention anywhere abroad. And we thank you as an Israeli for getting the award. John McCain was a great friend of mine personally for decades. And this young lady who was here, she was part of the founders of certain high-tech company in which I'm involved. Mm-hmm. And 35 years ago, she's second generation fighter. 35 years ago, I was the commander of her father, who was a battalion commander in our armor, and a very good one. And so it's really moving, and I feel in a family, and feel so many faces of people who are devoted supporters of Israel. It's great to be here this morning. Now, about your question, the objectives are the most justifiable one. After what you've seen or heard today, there is no way to avoid taking those steps to eliminate the military capabilities of Hamas and their capacity to govern the Gaza Strip. And it cannot be executed just from the air. Many of you are professionals, fully understand it. It needs many thousands of pairs of boots on the ground in order to complete it. It takes time. But the whole operation is taking place under 4 constraints. Each one of them can derail it and block it from reaching its objective. Number one is the hostages, the 240 or so. The second one is the need to minimize the risk that it will spread into a full regional war with the Hezbollah in the north and others. The third one is the commitment to follow the international law, constrain our operation, and create a kind of a gradual, quite fast, steep gradient of losing the legitimacy in the world. And the last one is, even if we assume that we achieve all these objectives, let's say within several months or more than several months, to whom we hand over the Gaza Strip. It's a major constraint because we do not intend to stay there for decades once again. So we are facing it. It's usually people ask, so what should be done in order to achieve it? But it's all intertwined constraints, and the right answer always depended upon the details, the facts, the dynamics of development, not what we wish, but what happens on the ground. So it's still, I'm convinced that we will win this war, but how exactly, it's not yet clear.
We're going to go through all of that. And one of my first questions needs to be about the numbers that I brought up. 1.5 million Gazans who fled their homes, 44,000 number of Palestinians killed or wounded since October 7th, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, which we know is controlled by Hamas, and 100% the number of Gazans who need humanitarian relief. In your opinion, why in the name of Israel's security, in the name of those goals that you identified, has Israel killed so many Palestinian civilians?
First of all, I'm not sure that the numbers are accurate, but it doesn't matter, even if it were not many thousand, but only 500. It doesn't matter. If they are civilians that should not be killed, we're sorry for it. But Hamas deliberately deployed itself among the civilian population, even deliberately used them. We know for years that the main command post was underneath the Shifa hospital. The bunkers were built by Israeli architects at that time when we built hospitals there. But it was used for years by the Hamas. The same applied to another dozen or more hospitals in the whole area. Basically, those 1.5 million moved because we asked them to move. And Gaza Strip is very limited. Within a few hours on the walk, on foot, you can move to the southern part. And we asked for it because there is no way to hit the Hamas if you don't warn the people to leave. And in a way, Hamas is at the top of the causal chain of people killed on both sides. Nothing to explain about the massacre, the barbarian slaughtering of 1,200 people inside this. This was made physically by them. But in the case of the Palestinians, they are causing it. Basically, they hold those people who were killed at the point of a gun to the heads, blocking them sometimes physically from leaving in order to have this human shield. Now, Israel, any target is searched, sometimes more than once, by two different teams, and a legal advisor, expert of international law, not of fighting, is sitting in the room to make sure that everything is done as far as possible in a way that will eliminate the risk or minimize the risk of killing people. Every target is warned. People have warned from day one. Any one of you who knows that in a place where he's living or where he's working, there is or there was in the last 2 years any activities of Hamas, be it a munition depot, a command post, a communication device, training site, launching pad for rocket or whatever, should leave his place because this is a target and we are going to hit it. We delayed the actual operation against certain neighborhoods in order to make sure that they left. And on the other hand, we cannot afford providing Hamas a total impunity by just being able to have enough weapons and enough human fear in the minds of the civilians that you can just hold them physically and say, you stay here because the Israelis are protecting us. So we are sorry for any lives that were lost for without any kind of making anything bad, but that's part of a war.
I've seen Israeli rules of engagement up close. I spent 6 weeks in Gaza the last time Israel invaded in 2014, and I saw how Israel targeted Hamas commanders when it had intelligence. Israeli rules of engagement allow for that targeting from the air even if that Hamas commander is surrounded by his family, and the family upstairs has 10 people and the family downstairs has 10 people, there are lawyers sitting there right next to the person who pushes the button, but the United States does not have that rule of engagement. It would not take that shot. And this is why, in part, we are seeing so many...
Would not execute or...
Would not execute with so many women and children. Why does Israel?
Yeah, I'm not sure that all the story. I know of other stories, many of them. I was present in one of them where the legal advisor said, gentlemen, you cannot do it. At certain points, even of the reservation were raised by the pilots themselves. They say, we see some operators of armed drones. We see someone close and wait a minute until it happens. Many cases we hit targets. We were not aware that they are there, but you're describing a situation where it was clear.
Because these people live. I mean, you call them civilian shields, but they're also called neighbors and family members.
Yeah, I cannot deny that people were killed there, but it was never a kind of something that was planned.
Sure.
But you mentioned the American. I want to give you an example. Assume for a moment that some terror organization based in Tijuana, some of you know the place, or the West Coast and on the Mexican side, and this organization execute a raid on San Diego, whatever, and kill the equivalent numbers in American terms of 1,200 Israelis, about 40,000 people. So they massacred within 24 hours, 40,000 Americans slaughtered, mutilated, raped, whatever. I have no doubt that whoever sits in the White House will order to eliminate Tijuana from Earth. It might have happened much faster in our case and with more devastated consequences.
Let's move to the last couple days. The IDF has entered Shifa Hospital to target what Israeli intelligence, US intelligence, and I personally know when journalists were criticized by Hamas, they were invited to Shifa Hospital to meet with Hamas. So they call it, Israeli US intelligence calls it a command and control. Is what you have seen in the last 4 days that Israel has found, does it match your expectations? Is it underwhelming, as some have said?
Shifa?
Yeah, in Shifa. And was it worth the risk to the doctors and patients to go into Shifa, given what they have found?
You know, I almost feel that I am standing here as a kind of someone who has to explain. So I'll tell you, in order to avoid massive killing of doctor, patients, and probably Hamas people, we delayed it once and again. We delayed. We told them we are going to go there. We have to find what's going there. So it's not a big secret that it allowed everyone who knew that we will do it to try to erase any signs of whatever happened there, to take everything, to take the people, to take many things, and still there are a lot of evidence that it was there. I have no doubt that the CIA and the NSA know almost as much as we know, and they would verify that there was a command post underneath the Shifa.
Although U.S. intelligence officials do admit their focus has not been Gaza. But anyway.
But you mentioned the possibility that probably we were aware or we were careless about what will happen to the patient.
I didn't say that. Just risking the life.
You just insinuated.
Okay.
So we took all the steps. We have people who worked with them for years. Some of them are a little bit older, but even the leaders of the hospital are older, and they know each other. So they made sure, first of all, to tell them exactly what we are going to do, to tell them exactly how we are going to do it in order to avoid risk to the doctors and to the nurses and to the patients. Then we left there certain kind of, they needed the urgent oil supply for their generators, for the babies and so on. So we left there at the opening kind of some fuel. It was taken by Hamas. We executed very carefully Not a single doctor was hurt, not a single patient. There are probably 2,000 or 3,000 people there. None had been touched or hurt.
I'm not sure that we have that confirmed, but okay, that's the argument of what Israel has done. The United States has been very supportive overall for Israel, and that comes straight from President Biden. However, the United States is shifting, the United States government, I should say, has shifted its language. On October the 12th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken flew to Israel and started his speech by saying, "I come before you as a Jew." That was Blinken's opening line, supporting Israel. On November the 10th, Blinken left Israel, and his quote was, "Far too many Palestinians have been killed." You yourself have talked about this. You thought that Israel only has a few weeks before U.S. support shifts. So do you believe that Israel only has now 1 or 2 weeks before it risks losing U.S. support?
Look, I'm not sure that it's clever to analyze and predict how long. I can explain you the dilemma. We have to finish it. We know from our experience, I remember the United States sending some of its forces over half of the globe to make sure that Daesh or Al-Qaeda is destroyed in certain corners of the world, in Iraq or somewhere else in the Middle East. And we have it probably a mile beyond our border and far from our citizens. So we have to complete it. It's a compelling imperative. Israel government cannot survive, cannot live up to its very basic commitment to its citizens if Hamas can control or come back as a military power. So we highly respect really a moving kind of support by the administration of the United States of America, deployment of everything that we can think of to back us and deterring Iran, Hezbollah, and even working with the neighbors about the morning after. So we highly appreciate this, but at the same time, Israeli government, and I'm one of the harshest critique of this government, but it cannot live up to its commitment if it stops this operation before the military capability of Hamas is practically non-existent. And it's true that probably more thought had been to be invested from day one about the day after, the morning after. And because this cannot be done by Israel alone, it needs other players, and the United States is the leader of this axis of moderate Sunnite government together with Israel facing the rogue axis led by Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, others, and backed by Russia and indirectly even to an extent by China. So the whole thing in American eyes is global. In Israeli perspective, it's much more local but much more concrete. And I believe that Israel will do whatever it takes to complete the job, but we'll have to take into account the American position. It's too important for us, and I don't expect it to carry it for many months now.
The Americans say no reoccupation of Gaza, but Netanyahu's been clear he does not want this Palestinian Authority running Gaza. Palestinian Authority told my colleague Leila Malone Allen that we will not go into Gaza on the back of an Israeli tank, and at least publicly, different thing privately, but publicly the Arab governments, as you have said, want nothing to do with this. So I ask again, is reoccupation inevitable?
No, the word reoccupation can carry several meanings in English, at least for my limited control of this language. We do not plan to reoccupy Gaza Strip and stay there. No. And our government, the present government, will really make a major mistake. And Netanyahu is the prime minister for the last most of the last 15 years. The policy of the last 5 years stated by our government, which could put in a concise way by one of the ministers, said, Hamas is an asset, Palestinian Authority is a liability, rather than the other way around. And it was Netanyahu's formal position.
Oh, yeah.
For the wrong reasons for years now.
And allowing Qatar to bring in briefcases.
No. Some of the audience do not know what's the politics behind it. There is a political, the real idea of this right-wing government is that whoever wants to block the road towards two-state solution should prefer the Hamas, keep him alive and kicking. The reason is that as long as Hamas is there as a terror organization, whenever the Americans, the world, or anyone outside Israel approaches us with the demand, why the hell you don't negotiate with the Palestinians? We can easily say, how can we? Abu Mazen in the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah does not control half of his people in Gaza. And when you look into these half of people, they are controlled by terror organization, even according to you. So we can't do anything. So it was a deliberate effort to block it, and which I think is a grave mistake. We should do the other way around. And even now, in the long side, that's not the right time to talk with it, because the blood is still boiling and many people are
But certainly the day after is a big question.
Looking for revenge.
Yeah.
But when the time comes, that's the only solution, is a two-state solution.
I've asked a lot of direct questions. The audience is coming up, but of course we need to ask one question about Ukraine before I turn to the audience. The premise of all of these panels is this, so let me just ask you directly. If Putin wins in Ukraine, how would that affect Israel?
It's bad for the world, and it's bad for Israel as a part of the world. It doesn't have a direct impact on Israel. But I think that our government made a grave mistake by not standing behind Ukraine from day one.
Refused the Zelensky visit and to send weapons.
No other country, probably no other country on earth, should be more instinctively go to support Ukraine. The raison d'etre of Israel was to establish a place which expressed our self-evident right for self-determination for the Jewish people. And we should be the first to resist the idea that a certain country or group of countries can decide that a neighbor should be eliminated from the map and from history. That's exactly what Putin is trying to do to Ukraine. So we should be there diplomatically and politically, and first of all, morally, from day one. People ask, why don't you send them these miracle magic Iron Dome? So the truth is that Ukraine is only about 30 times the size of Israel. There is a limited area that this battery can cover. And we don't have enough, spread the word, enough batteries to protect Israel effectively. And it's not a hypothetical threat. We suffered the first morning some 3,000.
Right, and in fact, the Israelis have needed the U.S. to send more interceptors.
We cannot afford it now, but we should support them in many other ways we could.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions about this topic. We'll try and get through a lot. We've got 15 to 20 minutes or so. So around the room.
Jane. Ladies first.
Jane is first.
Good morning, Jane Harmon. I was in Congress on 9/11. I think some of my former colleagues were too, or on 9/11. And after 9/11, Congress authorized by a vote of 434 to 1 the use of military force in Afghanistan to go after the organization that had attacked us. I just would observe, I think that's exactly what Israel is trying to do. My question to you, Ehud, is that you and some of the prime ministers before Bibi Netanyahu made enormous efforts to achieve a two-state solution, and I think it might be useful for this audience just to hear how close we came with the support of a variety of U.S. presidents.
A short version of the history of the peace process, perhaps focus on 2000 and of course, Bill Clinton's efforts in the end.
So it's true that many of us made an effort since Rabin and Peres, and even Netanyahu, he found a friend in Arafat and was ready to propose a two-state solution. It failed. it failed at the time, mainly because of the Palestinians. They were unripe yet to make this tough decision. In Arafat's case, for turning from a kind of a terror hero into the guy who has to solve problems of education, social security, sewage, and you name it, and he probably was not built for it. I don't know. So I think that it's known well enough that we tried and the American helped us. But I think that what really happened is in the recent years, the Israelis looking around and seeing this, what seems to be eternal quarrel with the Palestinians, and turn more to the right. There is a majority. This government was elected freely by the public. On a verge, on a very, very light edge, they won election, and they later on turned into this judicial reform that happened to be judicial coup d'etat. And in order to release Netanyahu from his court case, they built a coalition based on extreme right-winger, messianic kind of racist guys. I compared them to these two guys of the Proud Boys who were sent to prison for 20 and 15 years, respectively. Think of American president nominate one of them to be Secretary of Treasury with certain formal role in the Pentagon, and the other one to make a Homeland Security Secretary. So we are in quite a crazy situation on our own, even without the Palestinians. And no one think or thought in the past of having a peace negotiation with Hamas. We think that it's not too late, even now, with a weakened Palestinian Authority, with the backing of the Arab moderate countries, to create what I think for the day after as a multinational Arab force backed by the Arab League, probably by United Nations Security Council resolution if the Russians will not veto it, and for sure backed by Americans, Saudi money, Qatari money, establish this fort. It will take over the Gaza Strip for a limited period of time, 3 or 6 months, during which they will bring back the Palestinian Authority, which is the original internationally recognized owner of the place. They were removed by violent coup d'etat of the Hamas and should be brought back. That's my proposal or thought, but
although again,
there might be others.
And the Israeli government has basically ruled out at least the current format of the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah, a part of I think that even Lital mentioned it, that we are in a height of an operation to remove this government, but that's our business, not yours.
Next question, all the way on the end here. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. My name is Roderich Kiesewetter from the German Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Barak, for your moving words. You said that a victory of Putin would not have a direct impact on Israel. I do not concur. However, would you concur with the sentence that an immediate or sudden victory of Israel against Hamas would have an impact on Ukraine, because international awareness will re-raise towards Ukraine? And second brief remark, you were one of those who were, very brief,
one question.
Iran, how to contain and to avoid to become a nuclear power. Thank you.
All right. Let's take the first one.
I'm not sure that I understood what assumption the gentleman
Just take
made.
the first question. Would an Israeli victory in Gaza help Ukraine, because it would actually shift international media attention and overall attention back to Ukraine? Is there a connection between an Israeli victory and helping Ukraine?
I'm for Israeli imminent victory, even without Ukraine, and for sure, if it helps Ukraine in any way, I would be glad to hear that.
And we'll do the Iran nuclear if we can come back to it. Over on this side, please. Thanks.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for speaking with us. You began to sketch...
Identify yourself, please.
Jim Baker, Pentagon. You began to explore...
Related to the original one or no?
No, sir, I'm from Ohio, not Texas. You began to sketch what a two-state solution might look like. I wonder if you might extend that analysis to include the role you think the United States would need to play what Iran would need to do, how the Arab states would need to react over, say, the next 20 years or so? What are the specific milestones we should look for? Perhaps you might begin with the re-election of Ehud Barak in 2024.
I should admit that I'm not sure that even in Halifax, half a globe far from the Middle East, it's a right moment, so to speak, to discuss the details of how to create a Palestinian state, two-state solution. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I think that it creates a dissonance with the real needs. Our youngsters are now fighting there. Some of them that I know their parents, as I knew many other parents of other soldiers and officers, might be hit by the news that their beloved one just killed or exploded in some tunnel or whatever. I don't think that we should find the energy, but it's not a secret. I'm a great believer in the old Roman saying that if you do not know which port you want to reach, no wind will take you there. And those of you who sail from time to time know that with headwinds coming exactly ahead of you, you have even to zigzag, but you zigzag on the way to certain place that you know. So the long-term vision should be a two-state solution. And the reason is simple and painful. Between the river and the sea, as the pro-Palestinian kind of slogan goes now, there live some 15 million people, give and take, half of them Jews, half not Jews. If those block of millions can vote, this is a binational state overnight, and within a very short period, historically speaking, it's a binational state with a Muslim majority.
Jews would end up being
That's not the Zionist dream. If they cannot vote permanently, and they do not vote temporarily for just 56 years now, but if it becomes formally permanent,
that's a long temporary.
This is not a democracy. I don't want to use names from neighboring continent in the previous century or previous millennium. But it's not a democracy. So we have a compelling imperative. That's what I find so hard to explain to Israel. It's not because of justice for the Palestinians, which is worse kind of a subject probably on its own, but that's not on our highest priority. Because we have a compelling imperative to disengage with the Palestinians, to find a delineated line within the promised land, which will include probably 80% of the settlers, all our strategic interests, and cover only single-digit percentage of the area of the West Bank, and have this line, the border, a recognized border of Israel, under agreement, and live in a flourishing Israel side by side with a demilitarized, independent Palestinian state which covers the part of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And that should be the vision. But I have to tell you the sad reality. More than half, a little bit more, but more than half of the Israeli public believe the opposite, that there should be a one-state solution, and they believe that it's realistic in spite of the fact that I do not believe.
More than half of Israelis don't believe in two-state. More than half Palestinians don't believe in two-state. And nobody in the current coalition, not the war cabinet, the coalition, advocates for that. But that's certainly the vision and one that still exists for many. Okay, question right here.
Thank you. Michal Kotler-Wunsch, Israel's Special Envoy for Combating Anti-Semitism. And I want to start by thanking Peter for that recognition. And I want to make sure that we understand it's the recognition of all of the people of Israel right now under existential threat, fighting side by side, pro-judicial reform, against judicial reform, fighting side by side, right and left, fighting side by side, no matter who they voted for. And right now we have a unity government. And what I wanted to actually ask Ehud Barak, and it's funny that I would ask
in order to make sure that I only understand the question.
You know, from the perspective of anti-Semitism, which fueled the atrocities of October 7th, but also fuel the responses to the atrocities of October 7th, including the false moral equivalence that we hear over and over again. So that 9/11 is absolutely the reason that the United States of America had to ensure that Al-Qaeda and then later ISIS cease to exist, whereas that same understanding is not afforded to the State of Israel. But it's not just Hamas, a proxy of the genocidal terror regime of Iran, that carries that anti-Semitism, but actually the PA leadership that not a month ago peddled the same anti-Semitism between Holocaust denial, the severance of the State of Israel, right to exist with understanding that Jews as an indigenous people return to an ancestral homeland, and the severance of Jews from the Middle East altogether.
Paul,
And that's,
sorry,
I just want to ask about the two-state solution.
You talk too slowly for the question to be.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask about the two-state solution, which we all believe in, and in many ways, I think that 100% of Israelis would agree in the two-state solution, provided that it would first include the recognition of the right of the State of Israel to exist in any borders. And I would want to ask you about your opinion about that and why that hasn't been what we demand.
I will answer you, but expect you to stay relaxed when I answer. Zionism was a rebellion against the fate of the Jewish people that culminated or got its climax at the first pictures in the movie that we have seen. Zionism was based on the idea that we are taking our fate in our hands. We stop to relying on what others think or what others recognize or do not. We take it in our hands and change the direction of history. In the same period, some 130 years ago, from the area under the Tsar, of the kind of domain where Jews were allowed to live, 1.3 or 1.4 million people left. 1.25 went to America, and a small fraction to South Africa or Australia. Only less than 40,000 came to Palestine. Some of them get tired and left, and the 25,000 that remained changed the direction of history by making the defining element of their identity. We do not wait to others to recognize us. We will do whatever it takes until we get the recognition of the whole world. We got it in 29th of November, 47. Since then, we made peace with Arab neighbors. I brought up fighting against Egyptian for all my youth. And when I came first to Cairo as a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Israel, my first request was to go to the tomb of the unknown Egyptian soldier. And Amr Musa asked me, why the hell you want to see it? So I know him, you don't know him. I know him, I fought him, I probably killed him, and I could understand that his family never heard of him, and I want to pay respect. He was a good fighter. If we assume your assumption that there's something eternal built into nature, human nature and evolution that makes it impossible forever because this or that thing that they said, it's once again giving others the opportunity to define us. We will define ourselves. We never asked the Egyptians, never, to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. We assumed that we are there. We are strong. We are stronger than any neighbor 1,000 miles around Israel. In spite of this devastating blow that we got on 7 October, we are still the strongest country all around the Middle East. And as such, we did not ask the Egyptians. We never asked the Jordanians. I was deeply involved in the negotiation. Never raised this idea that we need the recognition of King Abdullah about our right to stand. We are defining our right to exist as a Jewish state. We didn't ask it from the Lebanese when we had a peace with them. We never raised it with Syria. Netanyahu went to make a peace with Assad before I tried, and he never mentioned it. So the only reason that we made it a spatial demand from the Palestinians has to do with political motivation. It was one more trick to create a counter-response that will make it appear as if there is no way to make a peace with them. We have enough common sense to judge that Hamas is not a partner. I am the originator of the saying, we do not have a partner after Camp David, but that's not exactly what I have said. I said something much more accurate. I said, we do not have a partner in Arafat at the present. I didn't say we won't have, I didn't say anything like that. So we are against anti-Semitism. We are for a strong Israel. But I do not believe that this idea of putting something that no way will ever be accepted to demand as a precondition from our rivals to admit our perception, basically the self-evident perception that we are independent power and we have right to define our trajectory in the world.
Okay, I think I just have two more questions, so let's just take them both together. Patrick all the way in the back, and then you right here. So let's just go back to back very quickly, and I'll get quick answers, and then.
Thank you. Patrick Tucker from Defense One. A lot of people would consider the size of the settlements in the West Bank to be the major barrier to a two-state solution, and settlement harassment of Palestinians in the West Bank has been increasing tremendously since October 7th. So very quickly, what is the realistic strategy for reversing the settlement policy when no administration beforehand has been able to do it?
Yeah, and hold on. One more question, sorry.
Thank you, Mauricio Mechulam from Mexico.
I'll remember.
Risk me not remembering the previous.
I will remember, no problem.
On the information warfare, despite of what you have described now as the national security interests of Israel, on the information warfare, this is not being perceived as such. So Israel is not actually winning the information warfare. So at what point does the losing the information warfare impacts on the national security of Israel in order for it to actually make a decision to stop?
I start with the second one. I do not believe in stopping kind of vital security interest issues just on the results, based on the results of the information war.
Yeah.
Information war, we do not control the social network. We do not, never pretended to control the wishes, dreams, or thoughts of other people. And probably some, in this world especially, I saw some of these titles here behind tells you that in the modern day, there is an uninvited voter, even into elections, the form of this information war. We have a crucial interest when it comes to national security interest. We act upon them, not upon what anyone in the world think about it.
And then
about the settlements, once again, I don't think that it's a ripe time when we fight. Many of the victims, especially among soldiers, are brought up and live in those settlements. They are part of our unity that the lady mentioned. We fight side by side. Sometimes in the same unit there are settlers and people from these kibbutzim around Gaza Strip, who are, most of them are extreme leftists. And they fight together to win. But having said that, I mentioned in my previous answer that there is a way to delineate a line that will include a heavy majority, I believe still 80% of the settlers within the line that I propose, and still the line will not cover no more than 9% or 10% of the whole area. So there is a technical solution. Of course, the settler movement believe that by spreading more and more of them, especially outside of what we call the settlement blocks, but isolated settlements here and there all around the area, they promote the situation that we cross a certain point of no return where it's impractical again. Nothing is impractical. Don't use the word inevitable about military development and about political development. I don't want to go back to history to show how many things that were believed to be beyond any kind of question ended up to be the opposite when the carpet of the future rolled kind of open.
Anyway, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much. Thank you for taking all my questions and the audience's questions, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.